Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live stream, Kickstarting the platform in 10 minutes using IDP Builder. And today we have a special guest with us, Carlos Santana, Senior Specialist Solution Architect for EKS at AWS. How are you, Carlos?
I'm doing great, guy. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining. And what we are going to do today is explain about IDP Builder and how you can build platform in actually full platform in less than 10 minutes. I have to say that I met Carlos, I think, a month ago. And when you showed me that for the first time, it actually blew my mind.
Yeah,
And
that's a promise, or less.
or less, yeah. Depends on how fast are your CPU.
Yeah,
And just for everyone that joining us, if you have any questions, comments, something that you would like to share with us, you are very welcome to do that on the chat or the comments. Depends if you watch us on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, whatever you like. Just comment, and we will see your questions, and we will stop to answer them. And we want you to participate in the session. Cool.
yeah. Ask
So,
away.
what? Sorry.
Oh no, just ask away, right? If people have comments.
Yeah, we would like people to join. By the way, we are going to demo a few things, and if you would like, you can also do that with us. So, Carlos, can you explain a little bit about what is Canoe and what is the value it provides?
Yeah. So Canoe, let me show this. I have some slides to go over. It's a project. Are you? Can you put them in
Yeah,
stage?
there you go.
Yep. And I think I can drive them from here. Um, like Guy said, I'm a solutions architect specialist for ECAS, and my team and others have been working with customers on this concept of internal developer platforms, which may or might not include a portal, right? And that also we'll be talking today about Backstage. But the capabilities are around the developer uh, mindset of getting self-serve, like autonomy to have things done by themselves, but with guardrails from a platform team. And this is usually with customers in AWS that have large teams. Like they have a large team of developers, so usually they have a team dedicated on like building their internal developer platform. And there's different capabilities that you can go through on building one of them, and everybody's building their own version of it. We can call it a stack. But in Canoe, we are working with these companies that they want to build kind of a community and between themselves decide what are the technologies they want to use and then what are the choices there. So this is the famous CNCF landscape of all the projects, and these are not CNCF projects. These are like the landscape. CNCF projects are like a small set of graduated, incubating, and sandbox. But when it comes to these teams to choose from CNCF project and outside CNCF projects, it's become very difficult to select which ones they want to use, which ones are mature, which ones will stay around for a while. And that's kind of like, so they want to come together, like learning from others. Like Canoe is a community that we built for these end users companies to talk between each other and share learnings. Like I have tried, like a company can say we have tried one technology. Let's say pick Argo. We could be talking about Argo CD today or GitOps for the last 2 years, and then another company comes in saying we are about to evaluate or we are about to start. Like, what are the best practices that you already hit? And then that company can say, well, we hit one example from Canoe where they have blog posts is scalability. Like how can one single Argo CD can scale to 10,000 or 50,000 applications to reconcile. And that's one of the things that me and Andrew from AWS, we joined and created the Argo CD SIG. So those type of things, like that company were like, oh my God, I didn't know I was going to hit that scalability problem. And how do I deal with it? By learning and contribute and talking to other companies that have gone through it, they can learn from that and then accelerate of like getting past of like when they get to that point, they know how to deal with it, and so on. Like Backstage is another example. Like how do we best put these things together once we choose them? So um, we have been looking, and these companies have been looking for a single solution out there, and they have not found it. So they want to just collaborate and create one. They want to create kind of creating a distribution, you can say, and that's a good metaphor that we have. So the idea is to choose some technologies, and then go like, how do we go past from selecting technologies and go into like, let's build a distribution of with this technology. So in this case, I'm showing like some of the capabilities for continuous deliveries will be GitOps. Everything is on Kubernetes, I would say. People have been watching your blog posts, and others in Backstage have seen Backstage build on top of other platforms, compute platforms. But in this case, Canoe is concentrating on these end users that are like building on top of Kubernetes APIs, using Kubernetes API as the infrastructure or the platform API to build all the automation around, like create the self-serving platform. And I mentioned, let me say, Terraform is here, and Terraform is a product that now is we have OpenTofu, but usually you don't see them in Kubernetes. But these end users have Terraform and they have skills in Terraform. So how can they leverage them with things like Argo CD and Kubernetes and Backstage in a way that can still leverage those modules that they have? Like, you cannot go from one day decide, let's throw everything that we have been working for the last 2 years and just like switch. Like, you'll be switching
Yeah.
every year, right, Guy?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's amazing. That's what's amazing. It reduced the number of choice and decision they need to take, and also helps to leverage the previous code or the previous things they have in place before that.
Yep. So let's take an example like a Linux distro, right? It's an operating system made from software collection based on the Linux kernel, and that's not changing. Like, everybody's building on top of the Linux kernel, and then there's a packaging system. So we want to do the same thing with Canoe. We wanted to make it an IDP distribution to build a developer platform, a collection of packages of software put together, but built instead of the kernel is Kubernetes as well as packagement system. And then this is what Canoe is kind of a internal developer platform distribution built on open collaboration. Like, it's more of the collaboration of these learnings, and then uh, they will build like scripts and tools and automation and things to, like, it's the glue code, right, to put these things together, because you already choose the technologies that are mature. So Canoe is not the thing to make sure that is production level. Is the software components is mature and production level. I think you were mentioning that people will ask, like, is this production ready? Well, Canoe is kind of like blog posts, community meetings, glue code, reference examples, and then some tooling to help with the CI/CD on putting these things together.
Yeah, and I think this is what amazing, because like in 10 or 15 minutes, we are going to show live demo how we can actually build something with IDP Builder and Canoe, and the ability to take that to production, and you build something out of that you can take to production. So it's not 100% that you deploy that and use that. You may need to do adjustment, may need to adjust it to your tools, maybe need to do some adjustment, but it takes you like a big step toward the end goal to have an IDP.
Yep. Yeah, what we want to talk is about like shifting into defining best practices in terms of, like, if you follow best practices of how to put them together, then you can, on top of it, put like the security guardrails, put the policies, put security, put the everything checks that you can have, and then different APIs, the interfaces for yourself serving platform. Like, an interface could be a CLI, it could be a web browser, which is Backstage is kind of the thing that we're going to show, but it could be a REST API. Like, nothing stops you from doing a REST API against a Kubernetes API and create something out of it. It could be running a container, or it could be creating another cluster from another cluster, right?
Yeah.
Inception of creating infrastructure, a database. So that's the technology choices. So Kubernetes is the API that this group, right? We're saying, like, we just consolidating these groups of individuals want to built on top of Kubernetes as the platform, and then CNCF, most likely CNCF projects with other projects on top of it. And then you can see here, this is a 23 graph of the velocity of CNCF. So we're picking some of them, like Argo and Backstage are up there with OpenTelemetry and Kubernetes. The GitHub distributions of like companies contributing to Argo CD and Backstage. So it's not just the ISV or one single company creating these two projects. Is a lot of companies are contributing into them. That's why they're kind of like the top projects. And these are some of the companies and users that are in the group. And then you can find us, AWS, and these companies and other cloud vendors that are joining in Slack, CNCF Slack. We have a Canoe-interest, and folks in KubeCon, if you were in KubeCon or you were watching some of the talks, for example, Autodesk gave a talk on IDP Builder, what we're going to see today. There's a technology radar. Those, for some folks that are like evaluating or CTO office, usually like to know what are the things at the different levels of like adopt or start looking into it, or if it's mature or not. So in the website, you will see some technology radars of like, these are kind of the tools that the Canoe project is going to concentrate on.
Yeah.
And
I have to
go
add
ahead.
something about the community on Slack. You mentioned it briefly, and I have to say that it's a very live and active channel. So people, like, I saw you and some other people actually asking questions, and a lot of contributors answer very fast. And I think that is something that's also important to evaluate, like how many contributions the people actually contributing to that community. And I have to say, I've been very impressed with that when I saw the channel on the CNCF Slack.
Yeah, I believe I ran the last community meeting, so we were having community meetings where we're not recorded. So in the last meeting, I requested that they were recorded, and they're posted in YouTube now, so people can see. And then I'm always asking the agenda, like people to show a demo at the beginning. So this week I show, maybe I show it today, AI chat on Backstage that you asked. Like I was asking, like, give me the code to deploy a Node.js app that connects to a DynamoDB, and give me the code, and then from Backstage I deploy the thing.
Wow,
And
that's
another
crazy.
person show like how to run IDP Builder in GitHub Actions for CI/CD, so you can deploy the whole IDP stack, test, and then tear down. And that's what kind of like Autodesk was created of IDP Builder for this use case of like, how do I do CI/CD for the whole stack very quickly by just building everything to as it looks like in production, but in, like, for example, a kind cluster. Like the only thing that you need is a Linux system with Docker. And in this slide, I'm showing kind of like what I mentioned of like when you go at scale with these IDPs and you're trying to like push Argo CD to the limits, how many clusters can you manage? Argo CD manage like remote clusters, kind of hub and spoke model. So there's a blog post that talks about the artwork of like tuning it, and then contributions that we did to the sharding algorithms in Argo CD. So that these companies are very heavy on Argo CD and scaling. This one is I think the one I mentioned, 50,000 apps, 5,000 clusters. And there was a KubeCon talk in ArgoCon in KubeCon EU. If you want to watch the talk by Andrew Lee. And then best practices, we have the some of the patterns out there for crossplane that we have developed. I joined AWS a year and a half ago, and this is one of the first GitHub repos I started contributing, working with customers on like stacks and different demos that they wanted to build. So we built kind of like the crossplane compositions for them. But I was also doing it for ACK. So at the end of the day, is using Kubernetes APIs to deploy that infrastructure. And then people like Autodesk is building their own CRDs, their own controllers to deploy that infrastructure, or maybe sometimes wrap some other controllers. And then plugins, Backstage plugins. We have a couple of Backstage plugins that I was mentioning. Like, well, how do we? Backstage is very open source, very pluggable. Like they have plugins for the front end, for the back end, and there's a ton of out there from from the GitHub repo from Backstage. Rudy, I think is the name of the company, has a good repo. I've been
Yeah.
uh, looking at their code, right, to learn Backstage and learning how to develop plugins like the AI chat that I did with Amazon Q of asking questions. So we have some of them in Canoe to integrate with Argo workflows, for example, or integrate with Terraform to deploy something in Terraform, or verify that the templates are deployed correctly, front end and back end.
Yeah. Do you have those, by the way, the plugins in the public website, or is it something that it's in Canoe repos?
It's in the website under reference implementations. The website has a lot of information, so maybe we can navigate a little bit when we do that and where to find them. This is a project I kind of like co-founded called the GitOps Bridge. Is kind of like best practices on using application sets. This was from working with a lot of customers that were using Argo CD for multi-cluster management, and also using they wanted to move away from using Terraform and using infrastructure as code to deploy like Kubernetes resources like Helm charts, and moving away from that and leaving the infrastructure as code like Pulumi, Terraform, Crossplane, just concentrate on the infrastructure and then GitOps for the rest. But there was no reference implementation on how to build application sets that you can pull secrets and metadata from the cloud provider and deploy. So I have a couple of talks, and this is the Git repo for that.
Wow.
And then this is part of Canoe also.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
So I'm giving a talk in GitOpsCon next week in Seattle. So if somebody's going there, I'll be there on April 15. And that one, this one shows Terraform, but that one is going to be like Pulumi, on how to best practice use Pulumi and Argo CD. Let me see
Yeah,
what
that's
else we
great.
have.
By the way, we will add like all the links that you talked about, the community meeting recording and all of that. We can add that to the video after. So if people are not watching us live and they want to get to the reference, link, they will be on the comments below.
Yeah, there's multiple places that we're going to be showing today. So you don't worry. Like we'll have all the links available if you want to. Like if you're just watching this and like, IDP, I heard a blog post around that, and then how do we do that with Kubernetes? That's the talk that we're talking today. And then IDP Builder, which I'm a fan of it. I think I still am. I was a very front end developer, then I did back end development, and then I'm doing infrastructure. But to me, was when I was a front end developer, meaning like web applications like jQuery. And I don't want to date myself, like jQuery, Angular, and Dojo. That was my stack. And then React a little bit. But I love like the way of like I change something in my IDE, I hit the command S, right? Save, and instantly I can see if the thing worked or didn't. So that's kind of the same concept for IDP Builder. Now I'm not a web developer, but I'm a platform developer. And I'm doing a lot of things with YAML for Kubernetes, kind of the API that we send to Kubernetes. So I need to change the configuration of Argo CD and the Keycloak and the Backstage and all these things running in Kubernetes. How can I just save in my browser and automatically the stuff is like refreshed, because I need a dev loop like in minutes or in seconds that I can like go over these configurations to make sure they're correct. And then once that's correct, I can submit my PR, and then my pull request, again, will run the same tool, run it again, and then merge into a staging or dev before it goes into production. And usually before IDP Builder, I was doing it with like, I update the file and do a git add and a git commit and a git push, and then double check, and then maybe delete some pods.
Yeah.
Then come back. The whole day was spent on like this thing. So then the nature thing of people was like, I'm going to skip some steps and I'm just going to modify the YAML and then kubectl apply. But guess what? That's not the same thing as we want to build the platform in production. We want to use GitOps. So I really want to have the experience. I want to run the IDP in my laptop in an easy way that is similar as production. And the only difference is running on a kind cluster, for example, in my laptop, or a Linux VM that I have somewhere. Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that sometimes people tend to think that if you are more on the platform engineering or DevOps side of things, you're not able to develop in the same velocity as front-end engineer and back-end engineer.
Yep.
And I guess that like this kind of tool really takes that to the next level, allowing you to enjoy the velocity and the pace of getting closer to front-end development, which is the feedback loop is much faster.
And one thing that I started, like, so IDP builder is one level. The next level, because it's Kubernetes, pods, YAMLs, containers, but the other level is like creating a, I don't know, an AI role or a bucket in AWS. Um, I've been starting to look into using something like local stack. I don't know, you heard about local stack, but it's kind of an emulator of these APIs that you can do some things quickly, right? To just validate, you know, same way of validating those things, and sometimes not actually using a AWS account yet. To when you move to the next one, is like maybe you push the PR, and then that one has the credentials to AWS, and then run the CI/CD. So that's another one I'm looking into, also, like making it faster.
Yeah, yeah.
I want that web development. Like I save I save my YAML, and then instantly is up and running.
Wow. That's amazing. By the way, we have a question from the audience. Mario Antonio Semivero, I hope I said it right. Is it enough to know for platform developers Terraform, Kubernetes, Git, and Argo? What do you think, Carlos?
It's never enough. I think those are like good, at least for this project and IDP that we're looking at, building this type of platform. Yes, knowing Terraform is very good if your company is using Terraform. Some companies you get hired and like, we don't do Terraform here. But if you know, like, a cloud provider, doesn't matter which one it is, if you know like how to use the CLI and the APIs and the dependencies, and you can do it in one infrastructure as code, it's easy to translate. Like recently, I spent the last year doing a lot of Terraform and crossplane, and the last 2 weeks, I think I tweeted, people follow me in tweet, I started doing Pulumi. I installed Pulumi for the first time. Like, how difficult it could be. The most difficult part was figuring out, like, what are the things that I needed to build. Like, the AI role needs the policy needs permissions, the policy needs to create a bucket gets created like this. The other part was just like, I used TypeScript and Pulumi CLI, and then up, and then the thing went. But the thing that you need to learn if you're learning this is the cloud provider, if that area, if you're looking into that, and then on the after that, like Kubernetes, like GitOps, like they mentioned. I don't know. What
Yeah.
do you think, Guy? Like,
Yeah. I 100% agree. Like it's a good start. Like you need to start for somewhere, and those technology can give you the base to something. Like without Kubernetes, Git, you would not be able to be a Kubernetes platform engineer. Terraform and Argo, as I said, it's a continuous learning path, and those things are really good to start with. But this job, compared to like other jobs, when you, for example, need to learn new packages, and here, as you said, the languages are going different, the technology are always changing, and you need to start somewhere. So I would start with those, but eventually you'll find yourself learn a lot. For example, if you're going to use the IDP builder and you want to change something, you would need to learn a little bit about Git, which is Git, but it's a different kind of of Git repos. And then you will need to maybe spin up something using Crossplane. So you will learn Crossplane like along the way, and that's always evolving. And that's what's cool about these technologies. There is always something new.
yeah, good question. Good question.
Yeah, thank you, Mario.
Thank you for the question. And then we have in the Canoe, we have a reference implementation. This one, it uses, it's the same thing as the ID. It's the whole stack, but deploy with Terraform, and it set up Argo CD. Like, it creates you create an EKS cluster, and then deploys the same stack on top of it. I'm working on some enhancements, and I created some issues to make it more lean, and then use the GitHub bridge pattern. But all these things are open source, so people can open issues. If you have questions or you have ideas, just open an issue. That's useful, right? If you want to contribute, also it's helpful. But ask in the channel, right? If somebody else is looking for help, or like Guy said, like interact with us in the Slack channel on, like, you were trying to do something, or you cannot find something, right? uh, or something's not working. Like Guy was, we were discussing like how do we get code spaces set up, and then we just like ask in there, and then like and then we did talk about like we should add it to the docs, or we should improve the README,
Yeah.
right? Like open
Yeah,
source.
it was amazing. I said it before, and I like having a good community, people that willing to answer, willing to help. And if you, even if it's small problem, like running IDP builder on code spaces, and we are going to do that in a few minutes, it's not a big thing. But the fact that people really care about the problem and answering the discussions, that's super valuable.
Yeah, the user experience, right? This is there's two user experiences here. One is you as a platform engineer, like this is a platformers, right? This is the topic of, if you probably watching here, you want to be a platformer, so you're already a platformer. So one user experience is for the platformers, like who takes care of the platformer? Like, what is the
Yeah.
user experience of the platformer? What is their dev cycle of, like, how do I learn? How do I choose technology? How do I put it together? How do I do my changes and to either do a feature or a bug, and submit a pull request, and then drink coffee, right? And then
Yeah.
it's done. That one experience. The other experience is just a platform, and you're creating user experiences for the team that will be using your platform. And if that user experience is not going to change the way they do things today, nobody's going to use your platform. Doesn't matter how good it is, doesn't matter how secure it is, doesn't matter how fast it is, unless it comes as a mandate. And then if it comes as a mandate, there will be less likely
Yeah.
platform, so they'll be upset, right?
Yeah.
So that's why also, like, the platform engineering, if you see some of the talks and blog posts talk about like the DevOps culture, like, by the way, DevOps is not dead. Like DevOps, that's what DevOps is culture of, like, involving the developers. Like, what is the experience that you want to have, right? You want autonomy, and I'll give it a talk in DevOps Day next week, and really, like, you want autonomy. And autonomy is not just like, okay, here's a Terraform module folder template, just have it. Here's the credentials to the AWS org, so you can create a new AWS account. Here's your autonomy. Go, and then learn Terraform and do your thing. Don't ask me for anything. Well, now that's not the autonomy I think they wanted. They wanted autonomy of, like, I want to job my job easier and faster with the things that I use every day. And they don't use Terraform every day. They use like Go to write a backend thing. They use Node.js to create a front end, right? They write unit tests in their IDE. The only thing they want is, like, put some config file somewhere that says, and the object storage will be located here, or a database will be my laptop here, and then the database will be production over there. But I don't care about the database itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Just give me a database. I don't care. I need SQL. I even don't care which database is in the backend.
Yeah, I care, but that's not something I do every day. So I'll be
Yeah.
slow on. Let's look for the person that knows this stuff, and they can do it faster than me, right? Everybody cares about everything, but it's the things that you do every day, that you want to care about, and then look for the people that do that specific technology or task every day, and they would do it. So as a platform engineer, you're like giving them templates, you're giving self recipes, you're like configuring things, so when they deploy something or something gets provisioned, they get a nice URL that says, here's the dashboard to see the metrics, right? When you want to debug an issue in production, right? Those type of things.
Yeah. And what is interesting is that some companies actually making developer experience people to be involved in the platform engineering team. And they are, like, as you said, like designing and crafting the experience for the developer and the internal customers of using the IDP.
Yep. Some of the at least one company that is involved in the Canoe project, was telling a story in one of the meetings was they are onboarding new engineers into their company, and they're front engineers. They know Node.js, know React, and basically they're using IDP Builder to bring up Backstage because they're developing the front end, all these front end plugins in Backstage to have all these user experiences for them, which are the developers,
Yeah.
um, and the other developers. But they needed some quick way of like spinning up the platform in the laptop or in a Linux VM, that they were able to like start coding React for Backstage and then save it and then submit a PR. And but they wanted to test the templates, right, and the assets. So they needed actually the whole IDP. They needed like the authentication with Keycloak, the Argo CD, the Git server with Git T and everything in there. So because the PR will be CI/CD in that way.
Yeah. What do you think? Let's start to build our
Yeah,
IDP.
let's
We have one question from the audience just before we start.
go ahead.
Vishwas Gotham, I hope I pronounce it right. As a platform engineer, where does your role end in building IDPs? Do you move to different kind of tasks like maintaining IDP? Uh,
And roles building an IDP in it doesn't matter what type of engineer you are. If you're a platform engineer, or you are a front end engineer, or you're a back end engineer, you build something, you're going to maintain it.
yeah.
Right? No one is better to debug an issue with your Java application in production than the person that wrote the Java application. Right? Don't ask me. I gave you a Kubernetes cluster, and I gave you a CI/CD pipeline, and I gave you metrics to get metrics out of that Java application. No better than you uh, to debug and maintain that Java application when there's a fix or a patch or a bug. Same thing for the platform. No better person than updating the version of Argo CD than the person that deploy and configure the Argo CD in the platform, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You need to own. You need to own.
Yep.
That it's all about. And I think that's something that is with larger companies. Sometimes, for example, the ownership about, I don't know, for example, the CI/CD itself, like the pipeline. So it's maybe not part of the same team responsible for the portal and for the templates. So
Yep.
sometimes there is one team that owns, for example, the portal and create the templates, and the other team actually build the CI/CD template and the creation of those within the platform. So in some companies, you own the full path or the full templating or the full creation of the platform. In some cases, you have other teams to support you in some areas. So it
Yeah,
really
that's a good
depends.
example, the CI/CD pipeline, right? Because that goes into like, how do I build a Docker container, and how do I scan it? And some companies have it centralized, right? They either have a .github repo in GitHub, right? And all that every repo uses the same actions, or sometimes they have Argo workflows, and they have the Argo workflows definition or Tecton task definitions sitting centrally, that they're generic enough to build a Java application or a Go application. At the end of the day, your microservices, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So with that,
So
let's stop and like let's. I think we took more time than we wanted to
yeah,
talk
yeah,
on the slides, but I think it's a good first episode. Maybe we do a series of like a new series here. But yeah, the promise, like, can we spin up the IDP in less than 10 minutes, and let's use the cloud. Let's use Web Spaces
yeah,
or DevPod. Like, yeah, I think you're using Spaces.
yeah. I will use code spaces in this one. Uh, let's give it a try. So can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. Let me extend that a little bit. Okay, cool. So from everybody that is not familiar with code spaces, you are able basically to create cloud environment, a virtual environment for your code. So what's going to happen is that GitHub actually is going to spin up an environment, which I have my IDE, but also I can run binaries and actually run code in it. At the same time, while GitHub is going to build a container with my code space environment in it, I'm going to show you a little bit about this repo. And if you're going to IDP builder on Canoe.io, examples and ref implementation, we have here the ref implementation that Carlos just explained about. And right in here, we have the using it part, which allow us to understand how can we use it, which is cool to use. And we got the code spaces MD markdown, which allow us to have instructions of how to spin it up on code spaces. So what we are going to do next, when our container is going to be up and running, we are going or to get the latest build, or we are going to build it within our code space. And that will make the full IDP to be created within our code space. And that's amazing.
Yeah, there's special instructions for code spaces because the port and the host name, you're accessing it in from the cloud, from your browser. But other than that, if you have a Linux system, it should work with Windows also. A Linux machine. The minimum requirement is a Linux machine with Docker. You don't even need to have kind install. I have kind install because of a kind. I'm using kind to delete. But yeah, that's the minimum environment, like a machine, your computer or a Linux VM, like in here, with Docker, because kind is for people that don't know, kind is a project from the upstream Kubernetes project. It's a very tiny binary that basically runs Kubernetes in a single Docker container. And a lot of people in the community, a lot of examples and tutorials, and people that develop controllers even, they use kind locally to just quickly have the smallest Kubernetes possible.
Yeah, and that's amazing because it's allow us to basically run Kubernetes in here.
Yeah.
Let me see if I
And
can
then
make
and
it.
then we're working on it's already merged, but we're also working on for people that may not be able to run Docker desktop in their computer. Some companies don't allow it. We're going to integrate with Finch, FINCH, which is you don't need to have even Docker installed. Like it will be a binary that can run kind without having Docker. And the last meeting we were discussing if we just like put the binary inside IDP builder. So for people that don't know Kubernetes, right, can just like for the developers that were you're going to use Backstage to create the front end plugins, they don't need to know Kubernetes. They're creating Backstage plugins. They can double click a binary and then have it up and running.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let me just start the environment. It takes some time to make it up and running. So I'm going to download the IDP builder. Cool. So now it's up and running. Now I'm going to take the second command. So what's going to happen is that because it's run on code spaces, we need to do some slight changes to the ports in it. Cool. And the last command, which is the third command, actually going to create. So IDP builder create. It will take some of the variables from the code space environment. And basically that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. That's it. What we need to do now is basically wait for it to be up and running. It takes something like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's creating a kind cluster, so it will be downloading the image for Kubernetes that includes the kubelet and the control plane, and then you are going to be installing. If you show the reference implementation, right, we're installing like Argo CD and Git T and Argo workflows and Keycloak and Backstage, Postgres, and so
Yeah.
if you're running
Crossline.
locally, you will need around like 4 gigs. We were talking about, right, of
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah. So
But if you're running in a Linux VM somewhere, it could be code spaces. I use DevPod because I use an EC2 machine in AWS that spins up and then it sleeps when I'm not using it. And then I've seen people right in their house, they have like an extra computer and they can like with Linux and then just remote with VS Code or your IDE.
Yeah, basically whatever you have Kubernetes running with 4 gigabytes of memory, you can create a full IDP.
Yep.
Cool. So we will let it run. By the way, something that you can notice during this time is that it's going to do port forwarding. What's going to happen is that essentially GitHub actually taking care of that port forwarding. And in these URLs, we are going to have our Backstage, Argo CD UI. Everything will be available and accessible from us from our local machine.
Yeah, you can run a new terminal and do a kind kubectl. I think I set up K also. kubectl get pods dash all, and you will see a lot of pods coming up, like starting or running, or an error because they're Backstage and Argo workflows depend on Keycloak. So if Keycloak is not up, those will error, but eventually will be up, and then eventually the other two will come up. That's the only thing I've seen like some problems. So yeah, you can see some pod initialization running init, and the idea is with this is creating a Kubernetes cluster. It's installing Argo CD, and then Argo CD is installing the rest. That's kind of the key aspect I was saying before of like not trying to install everything with shell scripts and kubectl apply, because this is the same way you want to run it in production. You want a maybe a managed Kubernetes cluster or Kubernetes cluster running in some cloud or on premises, and then you want Argo CD to be installing all the components or your IDP from Git, right, using GitOps.
Yeah. And that's amazing because it does everything for us. Let's wait for a few more seconds because, oh, there you go. Now Crossplane is starting.
Oh, I forgot. Crossplane is there because the demo includes 3 scenarios. One is deploy a basic app. I think it's a Go application. The second one is deploy an application that uses an object storage. So it uses Crossplane to create a bucket, but you will need extra like your credentials to AWS. And then the other one, I think it's using Argo workflows to run a Spark job. So people that are doing batch processing and Spark, which is very popular, and a lot of people running on top of Kubernetes, it will show you how to run a Spark job from Backstage, like launch it from Backstage.
Yeah, I think that today we will show the basic example of a deployment.
Yeah. We'll show
Let
only
me
show people
make it a little
how
bit
this
bigger.
is works under the hood.
Yeah, so Argo workflow already starting.
And the idea is like when you run this IDB builder, you run it with the dash P, and you point it to a folder that we have like the whole stack. But if you don't pass that dash package and just run it by itself, it just installs Argo CD and a Git server. So you don't have to worry about the let me remove the just Argo CD and Git and a Git server, a Git T server inside the Kubernetes cluster. And then from that point on, if you're not using Backstage, you can still have an IDP, right? A platform. Or if you're configuring if you're not using Keycloak and you're using something like a different authentication like Octane or another OIDC, you can switch. You can create your own folder for your own group with what components do you want to use, right? If you're not using Crossplane, you can remove it and put something like ACK, the AWS Kubernetes controllers. What else can you substitute? I think that's it. Argo workflows. If you're not using Argo workflows, maybe using Tecton, you can swap.
Argo workflow is easier.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if you are, you can swap Argo workflows for Tecton. It depends what are your technology choices. But at least the reference implementation that we have here is the very basic one. So we choose the common ones that this community of companies are using. So we picked our workflows and Keycloak. And Keycloak is joined CNCF recently, and it's very easy to configure and run in a small pod. But usually it gets replaced because replaced by your AD or your IDC. How do you want to authenticate? But some people don't just want to have the reason that we have it here is in Backstage you want to emulate a user that don't have all permissions or an owner, right? You have user one, we create one user one or user two, you can create different users, and then you can test your templates and your assets logging in as different users. So to log in, Backstage needs a single sign-on, so it's there out of the box.
Yeah, and that's amazing because some people actually prefer to start at the beginning with not having Backstage with SSO, and that really enforced them to start with it in place. I
Yeah,
see that.
and when you're running if you want to run Backstage, this Backstage from your laptop, sometimes I do it because I'm just working on a plugin. It goes into development mode, so it's not present. So you don't have if you don't have Keycloak, it will not do the authentication.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Maybe we should delete this one, make it restart.
Sorry.
I'm just curious if I think maybe delete the Postgres pod for Backstage and
Create
force it to
container
restart.
config. That's the
Let me see.
Backstage one, Postgres.
Yeah, let me see if the
I tested this morning. I didn't have an error there.
oh,
Yeah.
it's created 14 seconds ago. So maybe.
Oh, so
Oh, there you go.
this is this is also configured with external secret operator. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But some of these secrets are created with external secret operator, similar as you would do in your real IDP. So that's why the eventual consistency of the secrets is because our external secret operator is actually the one creating the secrets for the pods. So essentially is a real IDP. Same thing that you'll
Yeah.
be running in production, right?
Yeah.
You want to have the flexibility or maybe the confidence of like if you need to deploy your IDP from do a blue-green deployment of like migrating your IDP and reconfigure a deploying maybe a different cluster in some other region, you should be able to deploy it with the same recipe, right? Same concept of like you're testing it here, and if something is not working here, it will not work over there in the new environment.
So that's what's good about this component, right? So you have all the components available in here, and then you can build whatever you like with those. Okay, now we are waiting for the Backstage to be created. The last container, I think, in this series.
Is Keycloak running?
Yeah.
Because it depends on Keycloak. And then Argo Workflows is running.
Yes, I can see the Argo server is in Crashflow backoff. But it's interesting because it syncs some of the things. Oh, now it's running.
Yeah, this is Kubernetes, right? This is if people want to learn what Kubernetes is, eventual consistency, it would to that desired state. You gave all these things deployments and stateful sets, and eventually will reach consistent eventual consistency.
Yeah, and I think people can learn, like for the question about learning about Kubernetes, someone asked before, I think you can learn a lot from this process about all the tools and everything you need in order to run a production environment. It doesn't have to be these tools, but learn about Crashflow backoff and configuration and external secret. Those are the things required in order to run a production environment. So maybe let's try to access our
Yeah, I think so.
backstage. So when we're done, we can go to the ports. By the way, as we promised, is 10 minutes.
Oh
We can
wow,
go.
yeah. I think you measure it. And my computer, I think went faster, but maybe I have more CPUs.
Yeah, I guess because it's free, maybe it's a little bit. Um, don't have a lot of CPU in here. Port 8080, you click on this link. Port forward, and there you go. This is backstage. We can just sign in.
Yeah, user one.
User
In the
one.
README, there's a command to get those passwords from
Yeah.
your YDC.
Get in here. I guess it's on the other
It's,
README. I think it's in
yeah,
here.
it's in the main README.
Let's look for user
After the
one.
yeah, that one.
User password. Oh, okay. I think I opened 2 times. Cool, and we have backstage up and running.
Yep.
That's amazing. And now it's pretty empty, so maybe we'll create a new component. And this is exactly
the pretty empty. Was thinking of Backstage is has APIs. It's API driven, so you can actually implement something that things that you already have deployed out there, maybe infrastructure. You can like run a script that will gather that information and then put it into Backstage, so it's populated with the real things that are already deployed. Like some people think like you have to create everything through templates to be able to be in the catalog, but a lot of people just have things running all the time that as they discover, they will populate them into Backstage that has an API.
Yeah. By the way, one of the projects that I'm excited about is OPA on AWS, which got a lot of these templates.
Yep.
And they are actually great. So let's create a simple one, create a basic deployment. We need to give a name, and this is exactly when Backstage become really handy for application developers. What they want is create their own service. Maybe they want to create a wider template or with other services, but we can make it as simple as filling a form, a review, name test app, and this is the most simple example.
Yep.
So what's going to happen is that it generates components, create a repo, create Argo CD app, and register that. And now we can open our component in the catalog. So
yeah, and
what's
here it's using the Argo CD plugin in Backstage.
Yeah, exactly. Test app in cluster. By the way, if we will click in here, I think it will take us to the Argo CD application.
Yeah, at the bottom there should be a link.
Yeah, let's give it a try. Oh, I need the Argo CD credential. I think it's in here too. Maybe.
Yeah, that one I think it printed when it finished, but in the main README of Canoe of the IDP builder, it should be there. Oh, yeah, here it is.
Perfect.
Yeah, at the bottom.
Oh, good catch.
And if you're familiar with Argo CD, this is kind of the initial password, but Argo CD can be also configured with Keycloak or any OIDC provider. But yeah, but as a developer, right, I just want to create an app and then clicks on something and then bring me to my app. So there should be a test app somewhere here.
Yeah, page 2, test app. Perfectly added.
Yeah, if you can zoom in a little bit of what it created. So this is Backstage went in and created an Argo app that points to a Git repo. And like, which Git repo? Where's that Git repo? If you go back to Backstage, there should be a link to the Git repo.
Yeah, exactly in here. Let's click on it. And
then there's
this is
the
the Git repo. Yeah, and this is the Git repo that was created for us. with the catalog info. This is the information in Kubernetes.
That's the YAML file that Backstage uses, right, to register a component. And then on their manifest and on their folder, you should see Kubernetes YAML files, which is a small deployment, I think,
Oh,
with Nginx or something,
yeah, got it.
to have it as an example.
Yeah, I think, by the way, if we would go in here, it will also like what you can find in here as the on the catalog, on the component itself, when we have these annotations, on the Kubernetes
You can
annotations.
zoom in to see it better. Um,
Oh, sorry.
I think the font is too small. There you
No, I
go.
can see it. So you have these annotations, and this is what tells Backstage Kubernetes plugin which resources in Kubernetes are relevant. So, or related to this component. And if you're going in here and clicking on the Kubernetes plugin, we should see our test app. Oh, I don't know why it couldn't fetch that, but it's able to find our deployments,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. That's amazing. Like that's amazing. The ability to deploy Kubernetes, Kubernetes like full IDP in less than 5 minutes. Carlos, do you want to show the other thing, or we don't have time? I think we are lack of time.
I can show a little bit, like running from your browser.
Cool. So let me
Maybe we
just.
can switch to my computer. And again, we show less than we were planning to share, but we can do another live stream, right? We needed like the introduction, right, of like why
Yeah.
what is an IDP and what is this thing, right? And then we show you the promise of the 10-minute an IDP up and running. We were planning to show you behind the scenes of how it actually works, but I can show you a little bit, and then that will be kind of like the teaser for the next episode. So yeah, put in the comments if you want the next episode, or you're like, I'm good. We don't need another episode. That's also good.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen here.
Yeah. I will answer a few questions while you're showing your screen. So someone asked, can you show our added plugins in Backstage? Maybe we'll do a webinar for that. It's not that easy to do that in the meantime. But maybe we can run a Backstage workshop webinar, and then we can show you that. And Mario with another question. Which tools can we use for monitoring IDPs? So any observability tool can work. And by the way, some of them are instrumented into, for example, Backstage. But anything that is part of the platform is part of the platform. We can use that. Oh, we are adding, by the way, another comment. Give us an episode 2, please. And by the way, you can use any observability tool for all of these components, and also all of them have, for example, plugin with Prometheus. Cool. So I'm going to add your screen. Oh, it shares the screen when we are presented. Carlos, maybe change this one because it creates an infinite loop.
What happened?
So when I add this, it's share the screen when we are on it.
Oh, let me see. Let me see again. So I'll share this one. How about this one?
Oh, that's amazing. There you go.
Okay. So yeah. So the idea is I'm sharing here VS Code. I have the IDP builder in my in here, and if I do kind, that's why I have kind installed. But if I do get clusters, I have a cluster called local dev. If I docker ps, I have one Docker. Is that the font looks okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe a little bit bigger, but that's fine.
Let's see. How about now?
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, so I think in episode 2 we can talk a little bit about behind the scenes, but just to give you a teaser, is this is a kind cluster Docker PS. I can do the tool doesn't have the delete yet, but what I mentioned was if I run IDP builder again, I think I have it running. it would doesn't destroy everything. It just makes the IDP builder is running Kubernetes controllers in your laptop. So it will reconcile if you change something in the folder, and it will reconcile. So I have it running here. I can run it again. I think I was running the reference, the same thing as Guy was running. And if I go to the examples and what's the command that I use? When I run it locally, I'm not running on code spaces. I'm running it here. So I'm running it with create, use path routing. That's for the nginx, and then the package directory. Same thing. I can run it again in here, and then I can add another flag. If I do -h, there's a flag called no exit. So basically, this will run in the CLI would not exit. So let's run it with no exit. And this is how I run it in my laptop. And basically this, what happened? Package directory.
Maybe you're not in the exampled one.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, because
did.
I'm here's the workflow. I'm using the reference implementation, but I created a new folder because I'm adding the authentication instead of Git to a private GitHub organization that I have. And this is a pattern that I'm building for a customer and user. So I created one with it's called GitHub. So and it will run. So yeah, the folder, I copy paste the folder and dash GitHub, and I modify a few of the files. So for example, I went to the backstage folder. I think I have a change here, and I added authentication for GitHub, right? Using a GitHub app because I have a GitHub private organization. I'm adding my own templates. So I added the URL to my catalog with my own templates that use GitHub. And then this is running behind the scenes. So anytime that I change something in here, in this folder, it would automatically detect it and either add it to Git or prune it. Argo CD is deploying prune or delete it. And that's kind of like the example that we have here. Let me see what I can show here. So if I have here GitHub, Argo CD is deploying, see, it's reconciling demo 2. I have metric, I was installing metric server. So I keep adding packages in here. And what I wanted to show was, for example, I was playing with the guest book. So if I want to add something, I think I put guest book here somewhere. Guest book, Argo workflows, Keycloak. Let me show you one example. So this is Argo workflows, and the way that it works is this YAML files that it's discovering here is using this URL, canoe semicolon / and then a path. This is a path to what the IDP builder is going to do is replace the canoe with the Git server, create a GitHub repo, move the files or copy the files, start syncing the files that are located in this folder with the Git. So anytime I modify Argo workflows in here, it's pointing to the dev path. It's using here customize. It will deploy whatever is here. So anytime that you want to add something to the IDP builder, I can just external secrets. This is how it's deployed. Same way. It points to a folder, and then you go to external secrets, and you see the manifest files in here. So it has an install.yaml and deploys everything here. So if I change something here, it will be synchronized. So I can put like test equals Carlos, save it, and then I'll be annotating the secret in the service account. And you can see at the bottom that it discover that I changed something, so I don't have to do the git add, git commit, git push to see the change. Argo CD will pick it up. We'll push it to git t. Argo CD will pick it up, and then Argo CD would build it. I think that's what we can show
Yeah.
for today because we're out of time.
Yeah, people are really looking for the next episode. I saw like 2 or 3 comments. For example, this one. We need another episode. So I think that this is enough for today, and then we can plan another episode and show maybe a little different flow with Canoe.
Yeah, we can start
That would be
from a
amazing.
empty one and then start adding packages so people can see like how do we build it up, right? Start moving files into it, and automatically they start deploying.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Um, I think we did a lot today. Like basically, you walk us through what is Canoe. We deployed it on code spaces. We saw we can create IDP locally and then use it to sync our files, and that's amazing. Like Carlos, everybody on the chat actually enjoyed, and I enjoyed a lot
Yeah. We can
doing
even
the
do an episode
discussion.
on the generating templates, right? We can show you the Canoe. There's a Canoe CLI that you can take a Terraform project module, run it, and it would generate the Argo, the Backstage template, and then we can deploy it from Backstage. The same thing for any crossplane or any CRD. Run the Canoe CLI and then deploy in Backstage. So if you want to do a series, we can do a series, right? Showing all these examples.
I'm up to doing a series.
Unless if people want it, like you have to put it in the comments or in social media if people want to see it.
That's amazing. Yeah, by the way, we have a lot of good comments. So first of all, before we are done with the session, Carlos, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for showing us and walking us through. It was a really insightful and amazing session for me, as it was for everyone. And thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you for having me. We'll
And
see
thank
you
you,
next
everyone.
time.
Yeah, see you next time. And everyone, thank you for joining us. If you want to learn more, you can go to Slack for Canoe interest. You can go to Canoe website and basically do the demo as we did today. And if you want to join other sessions on live stream like that, you can follow us in the platformers and join the community and see other sessions like that.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
See
Bye.
you. Bye bye.